Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast explores the transition to net zero and the systems driving real change in how we move, live and power our world. Every week I sit down with the people leading that change, those offering insight, innovation and impact in many ways people don't fully see until they hear their stories. If you're ready for real conversations that inspire action and drive change, please like this video, subscribe to the channel and join us on this journey. And let's cut through the noise and build a better future together. On today's episode, I've got Katrin Harding from Wokingham Borough Council, which is very close to me indeed. And Katrin is the lead member for Environment and Climate Emergency at Wokingham Borough Council. So welcome, Katrin. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Liz.
So just to start off with, we met, it was July now, wasn't it? So a couple of months back at an EV day over in Wokingham, and you were one of the speakers, and my husband Richard, he was one of the speakers there as well. So it just felt pertinent to kind of get you on and just talk about the event and talk about you and talk about what Wokingham's doing and all things climate emergency and what that means and things like that. But I always start off by talking about people's backgrounds. So before we get into the nitty-gritty about your job, can we just talk a little bit about where you come from originally? Because I suddenly realise you're a northerner like me.
I identify as a northerner. The northerners might dispute that, but
they might do with me as well, but hey, whatever. And what kind of got you into the role that you're doing now? Just tell us a little bit.
Sure. So, like I said, I grew up in Lancaster, so that's where where my heart is really. I guess part of the reason I ended up there was because particularly my parents spent a lot of time driving up the M6 to go to the Lake District. So when the opportunity came to move up to Lancaster, and my mum got a consultant job up there. She was an anaesthetist, so that was a great place to grow up. And I guess partly saying that because I think that's really helped to guide. I've always had a passion for the environment, for the outdoors, spending time in nature. So a lot of my childhood was spent out. I mean, we've got pictures of me and my sister backpacking age 3 and 4. I don't think we went very far. I remember at the time it felt like a really long way, and we had a little bum bag with our coat and our sweets in, and there my parents with like massive backpacks. But we go up into the mountains, and then when we got a bit older, we got into orienteering, which I spent most of my sort of teenage years doing all around the UK. Including training camps and across Europe and competitions and stuff. So I think, that's literally out running in the forests, and you spend so much time outdoors, and I guess you see what's changing and you want to kind of protect and just sort of play a role in protecting the environment. And so I've always been really passionate about that and how we can sort of address climate change and keep things as well. Things always change, but minimize our impact on the planet.
Yes, well, I totally get you. So you went to a school in Lancaster, didn't you? But then following on from that, you went to Cambridge Uni.
Yep, so I studied maths at Cambridge Uni. Within the first week, I went, oh my goodness, what is this? And I made it through. I did my 3 years of Cambridge maths, came out with a degree. It's an amazing place, fantastic people. And again, I spent a lot of my time actually doing cross country and orienteering club as well as studies. And some of my friends are still there and still really passionate about the world. In fact, can I plug one of my friends who's just opened a refill van called the Vanguard Refill. So if anyone's listening in Cambridge, look up the Vanguard Refillery. She'll be going around in her electric van refill shop very soon.
Oh, fantastic!
Alice Night Owlers is just in there.
What a brilliant idea! I like that. Yes, and I do know at least one person who probably will be listening who lives in Cambridge as well. Okay. So yes, that will point her in that direction. Fantastic. So after you left Cambridge, then what did you end up doing?
So in my last year at Cambridge, I spent the summer before my final year working for Asda, actually up in Leeds, and
Oh, I know
doing
that one. Yeah.
customer data analysis, and doing maths and looking at various graduate schemes. I thought, oh, maybe analysis, that feels like something that maybe I should do. It was great. There were fantastic people, but I didn't find it that interesting. There was only some people get very excited by, oh, the weather forecast is hot, we're going to need more ice creams. Didn't really do it for me. So in some ways, and also I think it was quite a lot of you and your computer. I think it made me realise I wanted something a bit more a bit more varied. So, but I actually applied to a graduate scheme at BP. So this was in the trading team because I literally had no idea what I wanted to do. I was coming out with a maths degree. I knew I didn't want to teach and I didn't want to go into computer programming and I didn't really have many ideas. So I'd met some people who were on the BP grad scheme, sounded, really interesting. And I thought, well, maybe it'll be an interesting training program. Maybe I'll get to go and work in the solar power, sort of the more solar and wind part of the business. Let's see. I ended up at BP, and very, very quickly I thought, wow, the energy industry is fantastic. Not necessarily oil and gas, but energy, it's got technical, it's got environmental, it's got political, economic, sort of everything's in there and we all use it every day. So so that was great, met some really great people. And then the way the grad schemes work, you kind of spend a year in different roles. So started off in the treasury function, which is quite interesting when you're seeing essentially the cash flows from the whole
I bet, yeah.
It's quite something. And then I spent a year actually on crude oil operations. So
Oh my
moving
word.
ships of crude around sort of South Africa, the Middle East, and so on. Which again, it is very interesting learning more about these systems that underpin to be honest, our whole our existence in like the old system. And I guess that's kind of an approach I've always had was I want to change this, but unless we understand where we're coming from, how do you know where to start? Like how do we change things? And maybe I've changed that over the time, but it was fascinating and I guess also you get a little bit more under the skin of, you probably have this with EV myths of, no, they're not a panacea. They don't solve all the problems in the world, but let's not pretend that our existing systems are brilliant. Like there's quite a lot of problems with them as well. So, so I spent a year doing that and then I wanted to move into actually what we called our environmental products trading team. So that was around the, at the time, the EU emissions trading scheme, so environmental permits, the team that also looked at the Paris Agreement and the how any carbon markets or trading would emerge from that. So first and foremost, to comply with regulation. So he has emitting production sites, refineries across the world, there's fuel mandates and so on. So that was the team that sort of managed the compliance for all of those and then looked at kind of trading opportunities on top. So one of the first projects I did in that team was looking at biomethane certificates, and we now see through the renewable fuels obligation kind of biomethane coming into transport and what are the different options there and how to optimize that. And a role that when I joined BP thinking maybe I'll go into solar or wind, I had no idea these markets even existed. No. And then I spent 8 years working in them. So, yeah.
Gosh, blimey. So coming out, what was besides having small children? Because I know you've got small children. Was it having small children actually? That'll be my question. That got you thinking differently. I mean, you said to me, you just said, haven't you, that you always had that kind of love for the outdoors and for climate and sustainability and stuff. Was it? Because I know that there's a number of people who have a bit of an awakening, don't they? It opens their eyes when you're thinking about a small child coming into the world and kind of what you'd like to be different, moving forwards?
Yes and no. So it's a bit of a yes. I guess part of the other things were so I moved into a team looking quite a lot at the carbon offset markets, which have some absolutely brilliant people doing phenomenal work around the world, but also some really big challenges to kind of, how do we trust that? I think the basic economic principle of, hey, I would like to reduce emissions. Oh, suddenly, I've done the easy or the stuff I can afford to do now. The next bit, either the technology's not there or it's 100 times more expensive, but can I support reductions or removals somewhere else? I think fundamentally that does allow the world to go faster, further, as well as supporting loads of amazing. Some of the projects I was working with were doing fantastic work with forest conservation in the Amazon basin, or improve cook stoves for really, really poor people in sub-Saharan Africa. So fantastic projects. I guess over time, and the whole market was it had a huge boom in around 2020, and then quite fair enough, there was a bit more scrutiny, and it's always been on a continuous improvement path. But I felt but there are challenges. We need to have absolute trust that if this certificate is being used to balance against an emission, that it really, really does represent that reduction or removal. And in many cases they do, but there are examples where it's not been the case. And so the market's been in a really tough situation for the last, I'd say, 3-4 years, where that trust, I think, had been a bit broken. And so working with these projects where I was, they were doing amazing work. I wanted to support them, but the whole, it wasn't from a charitable perspective. It was from does the regulation allow me to use this certificate? Will the voluntary carbon market, support it? And that was kind of breaking down. And so I guess that the carbon markets were in a tricky situation. Felt like we were having some of the same conversation we were having 5 years before that hadn't been fixed. And I think increasingly I was a bit more personally, as you can imagine. So there are many brilliant people who work at BP, and I'm sure that's the same across all oil and gas companies, including many kind of really people who are eco-activists. So a fairly senior person went, oh yeah, I'm a member of Greenpeace. Like, you might not think that, but it does happen, and there are fantastic people there. But I guess for me, I'd got increasingly a little bit more uncomfortable about that juxtaposition, and also, so combined with that, I was kind of thinking, maybe it's time to try something else. And then when I was pregnant with my second child, so I've been a member of the Liberal Democrats since Brexit, not particularly active when you live in East London, moved to Wokingham post-COVID, and I got asked, would you stand for, we've got all-up elections in May, would you be our third candidate in Thames Ward? Gosh. So, and this was about January, and I went, well, I had thought about, standing for local elections in the future, but I am having a baby in June. No, that's fine. So,
oh my God. Oh God.
And I also said, do we expect to win this seat? And it was like, probably not. Or it would be an outside chance. So so that was a bit of a, and then so started campaigning, and actually really quickly I absolutely love getting out there and talking to people. So we were knocking on doors every weekend, pretty much from January through till May. It was just really nice to meet people in the local area, kind of connect with people who I wouldn't naturally bump into, and feel a bit more at home as well. We'd lived here for 3 years by that stage, so relatively new, but it's and then ended up winning not winning, I was actually third, but there were 3 seats. So getting elected, and joining Wokingham Borough Council as an elected member at 33 weeks pregnant. So
oh my good God, I didn't realise you were that far on. I don't even know what to say about that.
there were quite a few nervous looking people at the count who I think didn't. I was like, oh, it's fine. I've got at least like 5 weeks still to go. But actually, it worked out really well because I got elected and and then the team were really supportive because obviously it wasn't a surprise that I was about to have a baby. But it meant I didn't have to worry about sorting out my work at BP because I mean, some people work part-time, full-time whilst being an elected member of a council, not with small children, or I really wouldn't advise that. It would be a bit ridiculous. So, I was kind of like, okay, well, I'll go on maternity leave. I'll work out what this council role really means, how much time it takes, and so on. And then, but I had been thinking for quite some time, I want to work. Yeah, I was getting a bit sick of commuting into London. I wanted to work. And the other thing was with the fantastic projects I was talking to all around the world. I mean, brilliant. And I don't dispute the amazing impact that they can have, but it feels really remote. I hadn't been to visit many of them, very few in fact. But whereas here and now, I wanted to do something that felt more tangible and local. And, if we can't change our systems in the UK and particularly here in Wokingham, we are one of the most affluent areas of the country. We have, many people, amazing scientists and engineers and business people and just fantastic local people as well. If we can't sort it here, how can we expect the rest of the world to sort this out? That's kind of it all came together pretty well. And then, I was elected. My son has been to 5 council meetings.
Has he? Oh, bless.
Attached to me. Because much as, yes, there is a maternity leave policy, but at the moment you can't vote if you're not there in person. Right. So for us, that was important in terms of the arithmetic in the chamber. So my baby came to 5 council meetings.
Hey, well, if do you know what? Thinking about it, that's brilliant that they're accepting, because that means that there's they're quite forward thinking, and what you were saying about being able to kind of do all this locally and look at the local kind of economy and look at everything that we're trying to achieve with regards to net zero. I reckon you're not the only councillor or, elected member or even somebody working for a council who doesn't want to do this. There are a lot of people out there. Why would we, of course you need to support other parts of the world as well, but we've got to get it right here as well, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's sort of that combination of, yes, I was moving that direction anyway, but also, with young children, I wanted to work more flexibly. So we've just started the new term here. My eldest is in preschool, but school terms have already dictating my life. And I have a pickup at 3:00 that comes round very quickly. But I want to be able to do that and work in a way that it's a bit more flexible. It does mean evening meetings quite a lot, but I think actually there's a huge it could be a really exciting way or a good time of life for people to get involved in particularly local politics, because it is something flexible that I think there's a lot more people that we could tap into at this stage. But
you're going to be giving people ideas here. So yes, if you're watching and listening and you're interested and you're on mat leave or whatever, or you it doesn't matter wherever you are. It could be something that you might want to get involved in. So if we just talk a little bit, there's a few. God, there's so many things I want to talk to you about. Let's start with the EV Day. But let's connect it back to, because the EV Day was kind of held in Wokingham. I know Claire Sharp, who's like the project manager for a lot of the EV charging side, was massively involved in it, and it was so much bigger than I know even Claire thought it was going to be. But if we kind of link that back to kind of the whole point of this was because Wokingham Borough Council declared a climate emergency in June 2019. We might have to come back to these separately, but I think the climate emergency thing is really important, because to me, lots of people probably don't know what that means. So it was June 2019. What did that mean I know you weren't there, I know but what was declaring that climate emergency about? What kind of how did that translate into any kind of tangible actions and policies and things like that?
Yeah, so like you say, I wasn't there. I took over this executive role in March this year, and it's to kind of shepherd that climate emergency action plan. So there is an action plan. That's the good news. So I guess stepping back in time, 2019. It was. I think there were quite a number of other councils have declared climate emergencies. I think we were probably in the first wave, but really, I think it's a great statement. It got unanimous cross-party support to say we're in an emergency. This is not climate change, global warming, all these kind of softly kind of maybe warm fuzzy ways that we could talk about it, even though that's quite scary. This is an emergency. We have to act, and we have to act now. So I think it was really powerful at the time. The whole discourse on net zero and in politics, maybe we'll get onto it at the moment in a little while. But I think it was great that it was a mark in the sand. We believe there's an emergency, and we're going to do what we can to address it. So coming out of that, there's the main way that Wokingham sort of formulated our responses through what we call our Climate Emergency Action Plan. I'll be presenting the 6th annual update report to full council in a couple of weeks. So that just shows you we are updating people every year. And I mean, it's a huge report. It's well over 100 pages, and it lists actions in a number of key areas. So transport is absolutely one of them. For us in Wokingham, the biggest sort of area of emissions is domestic, so domestic mainly heating, but a bit of electricity use. Transport is second, a close second, and a lot of that is private car road mileage. So one of actually the biggest action in our long list of actions in our climate emergency action plan, we convert them all in. Well, where possible, we try to put a tons of CO2 equivalent sort of value on kind of, okay, this action, how much will it save? And the biggest number is that switch from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles. So within that, we have an ambition to reduce internal combustion engine mileage by 50% by 2030. And that's not just electric vehicles, that switch, but it is making it safer and easier to walk, cycle and wheel local journeys, increase public transport use, and actually are there some journeys that don't need to happen anymore. So those all play a role, but realistically, particularly by 2030, that switch from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles, we calculate could save the borough around 75,000 tonnes of CO2 equivalent every year. So it is the largest contributing factor. So we're the council. We do not say, and we could not say, everyone go and change your car right now. So that's where these events like the EV Day and Winners Triangle come in. We want to educate people, make them aware of what's out there, come and test drive. I mean, we both drive electric cars. I think it's great. Hopefully people will come along and realise, oh, this is quite interesting. I might think of this for my next car, but also around how charging infrastructure is changing, around salary sacrifice schemes. I think that's been a really major factor in terms of all the benefits that actually mean that getting an EV through a salary sacrifice scheme is really good value for money.
Yes.
So there's going to be different reasons that people adopt electric vehicles, and I think that event was about just giving people more information so that they can see if it would work for them.
I mean, there were quite a lot of there were a lot of residents there, and a lot of the residents were retired anyway, weren't they? So they're not going to be into salsa kind of stuff. But actually, the whole idea behind how you obtain an EV, I could just see the interest from the audience, and it was just because on that day, and I've talked about this a couple of times, I've written about it a little bit. On that day, there was a couple that my husband knew the chap, and they'd been thinking about moving to an EV. Well, they weren't sure, it was one of those things, they weren't sure. They didn't know the difference between plug-in hybrids and all, and electric. And like I say, I've talked about this previously, but that event gave them the opportunity to start thinking about stuff. Then they also, do you know what, the thing that I found was really interesting, and this is for them and me saying it on their behalf, it was talking to people like me and you, and there was a couple of other friends of mine who went as well, and we were talking to them and trying to explain, about the difference, and they'd not even managed, and I've said this before as well, but they'd not even managed to get a test drive.
Wow. Because
their one big thing that they needed was space in the boot for a wheelchair. One of their family members was in a wheelchair. So I had ongoing conversations with him quite a lot, because I said, look, when you really feel for somebody and you're just like, I totally get it. If there's one thing that I can do from this, in my mind, was supporting them to kind of just have as much knowledge as possible, because sometimes you know what it's like, you end up going down a bit of a rabbit hole when you're researching stuff, because you don't know any different. What are these things? And me and my friends were talking about this yesterday, not necessarily to do with EVs, but other things. There's so much misinformation out there just in general.
Yeah.
It's hard to kind of weed out the wheat from the chaff kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? And actually, I went on a test drive with them recently.
Okay.
In Reading, at Wayland's Volvo. The chap was called, I think he was called Jed. He was brilliant. And we went out and, they realised, because they wanted to fit this wheelchair in the car. And they realised that their chosen model wouldn't fit the wheelchair in the way they wanted it to. So I basically said, is there a car that's a little bit bigger, that's got like a bigger room in the boot? The guy was so good. He literally, we pointed to one that was slightly bigger, got it, took it out, test driven it. They're getting a new car. They're getting an EV in the next 2 or 3 months.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it's only 2 or 3 months. We were waiting 15 months.
Oh my God. Well, yours was 2.5 years ago, and it was really crap time then, wasn't it? But yeah, I mean, to me, that was a really good story. Yeah. And I just felt, so good from being able to just be even a tiny, tiny part of it.
Yeah, no, and at the end of the day, this is all going to come down to individual decisions, right? And that's as it should be. But I think, there is quite a lot of misinformation out there, and any change is kind of, it's always an adjustment. There's always that, I'm not sure about it, what about this, what about that, while the technology is evolving as well. So yeah, I think it really is getting information out there. We're actually running a second event. So that event at Winners Triangle was kind of first really geared towards businesses. So whilst perhaps much of the audience maybe were retired, I wouldn't be surprised if some of them might be directors on companies. They may well be involved.
NEDs,
So who knows? Maybe they're looking to offer salary sacrifice to their current employees. But also we did want to open it up to all residents to come along and have a look, and it seemed to go really well. But we're running a second event on the 20th of September in Elmsfield, right in the centre of Wokingham. So unfortunately there won't be test drives because it is a pedestrianised area and it's very, very busy. But, in terms of that, can I fit something in the boot? come have a look, climb in the boot. There will be a range of models there for people to kind of have a look at. We will be doing test rides of electric bikes. I also have an electric bike.
Have you?
It's
Yeah,
a
I'd
car.
quite like one.
I ship around 2 children on the back of it all the time, and
Love
I
it.
love it.
Yeah,
That's another part of the new way that we can get around.
exactly.
So yeah, that again is more that's fully for residents. Hopefully it'll be a really good event.
And I think micromobility is a really good thing to kind of focus on because, like you said, there are times when people drive when they don't necessarily need to drive. I do it myself because I have a bit of time blindness having an ADHD, so I kind of go, oh crap, I've only got 5 minutes to get there. Oh, if I'd have actually thought about it. I was so chuffed at myself. I managed to get down to my friends, get home from Basingstoke on Friday and get down to my friends in like 9 minutes walking. And I was like, I've done this, so we don't always have to do
And
what we
actually,
always done. We
yeah,
always did.
and yeah, I've cycled all my life. I think it is a mindset shift as well. People are always like, oh, but what if it's raining? Like, I grew up in Lancaster. I cycled to school every day. It rained most days. But it is a mindset. But I have it with my daughter as well. She's like, oh, it's raining. I'm like, nope, coats on, out you
Get
go.
in, yeah.
But yeah, trying those shifts. So we like to go to park run on a Saturday morning. We normally go to Dinton Pastures, and with small children, it's normally okay. Get the running buggy in the car, drive down, and it's sort of it's only a couple of miles from us, but it's sort of 10-minute drive. You have to go through Twyford Crossroads, a bit of a pain.
Yeah.
Then you have to park. It is paid for parking at Dinton Country
Oh,
Park.
it is. So for those of you that got no idea what she's talking about, because you don't know anything about Wokingham, my son used to call it's a lovely place. It's a big lake, isn't it? But the parking's rubbish. Lots of
Oh,
mums go
come
there.
on.
Yeah, lots of
Parking is, you do have to pay for parking.
yeah.
It's busy, but that money supports the upkeep of all the country parks and
Yes,
and
it's
generally the council
beautiful.
services. So
It's
we appreciate it. But
yeah,
anyway, so
and my
we
son
now
used to call it
don't pay
Dinton
for parking.
Passages. Sorry,
Apologies
yes.
to the officers because I'm no longer paying for parking when I go to park run because we go by bike. We've got a running buggy that converts into a bike trailer. We hook it up, we cycle down, we turn it back into a buggy, and off we go. So it is lovely, but you need to try these things out. And that's the same. People might be sitting there thinking, oh, I'm not sure if I want an EV. I quite like my car. I know how it works. Maybe I need a new car. I'll get the same one I've always got. Whereas, it's nice, giving people the chance to try things. You might find out it works better for you. I mean, preheating your car, pre-cooling your car is pretty nice. In the summer, we've been on some really hot trips to playgrounds, starting to pack up. Okay, I'm just going to cool the car down because getting two small children into really sweaty kids' car seats is not popular. So there you go. There's an advantage of having an EV that isn't the climate aspect, but it does make a difference to
Ahead of time, being able to do that. And actually, I'm just going to say, if anybody's listening from Dinton Pastures, I was probably a little bit mean there, and the parking isn't as bad, but sometimes it can be a little bit difficult. But more when you've got small kids in your car.
and anyway, it works, but why drive? And I think that's the difference, right? Access to nature, open spaces is really important. Doesn't necessarily equate to car parking, but where we do, we've got a couple of EV charging spots at the activity centre in Dinton. So hopefully as more and more people drive electric, if we need more charging points, then we're ready to put those in council car parks as well.
Fantastic. So do you know what? Let's go back to what your actual job entails. What does a day in the life of Katrin Harding look like? I mean, what do you get involved in your current role?
Sure. So I guess firstly, for the people who don't know, and I didn't really know before I entered this world, being an elected member is not It's not a salary position. At the end of the day, the officers do all the work, and that's as it should be. So yeah, we are elected by the public, and that's one of the things I really like about it. You have to be grounded in what people want, not in a populist way, because I think sometimes there are some very, very noisy voices, but actually in a, okay, what about everyone? Yeah, and I'm a firm believer that to address the climate emergency, we need to come up with solutions that work for people and that people want, because otherwise it won't stick. We can do what we want, and if it's really unpopular, it will get unraveled. So we need to kind of work with people to design this rather than imposing things on them. So so a lot of my role is about being that public facing, thinking about the bigger picture. So executive members have responsibility in a particular portfolio. Mine, environment and climate emergency, bins, grounds maintenance, grass cutting and hedge cutting, the countryside service, and the country parks, and then the climate emergency kind of strategic work, and then the final area is on renewable energy generation inside the borough. So yeah, we've got a number of solar farms in the works. First one, well, I say first one, the big one that's been working for a long time at Barkham. Yeah, it's a really huge contribution to the decarbonisation of the borough. So looking at those kind of big actions on our climate emergency action plan, solar farms is one of them. Much as I would love to see solar on every single rooftop, but the scale is just not. Yeah, I think we achieve thousands of times the rate of panels going up by doing a solar farm. But one of the other ones that actually, we'll see what order they actually come out in at the moment. One of the ones I'm really excited about at the moment is at Mere Oak Park and Ride. We're sort of fairly early stage, but looking at putting canopy solar there and as an EV charging hub. So it's just off the M4. So it's a great location for charging. So it's still fairly early days, but it's much smaller than kind of field-based, ground-mounted solar, but canopy solar I think has a huge potential. So looking at all of these different options. So in terms of my day-to-day, it is super varied. It'll go from I did a bit of pavement clearing the other day, but more of brambles and stuff. But it could be from, okay, I'm reporting this pothole, or helping people with, to be honest, anything that they contact me about. I am here for the residents of Thames, through to I have regular meetings with officers across that portfolio to find out what's going on, if they are looking for any kind of, I guess, steer on, we're thinking about this, does that sound like the right direction? I like to learn what's coming down the line. There are a lot of meetings, which has been a bit of an adjustment. I'm still slightly in my adjustment from corporate world to local government world, particularly given a change in role from being the person doing all the work to being the kind of, it's more of a strategic management. It's a strategic sort of oversight role. But yeah, it's hugely varied, and I think that's one of the joys of doing this job.
And that's a really, that's a good thing, isn't it? Just having a bit of kind of change and sort of a few different things. And I was scribbling down. We were talking before I was recording. We came back from Spain and France just over a week ago now, and I saw quite a lot of. Obviously you get more sun theoretically, except for this year over there, but there was a lot of canopy. Solar car parks. They didn't actually use charging there though. So, that's always that is always a really good option.
Yeah, and I think France have actually made it a national mandate that any new car park has to have solar, and I think there might be a deadline by which they're going to roll it out across all car parks. I might not be right. But yeah, I think and it's also, there are, there's all the where we're going to generate the electricity, and at the moment, we had a record-breaking solar generation in the country this year, which is amazing. But yeah, and when the wind blows, lots of our wind power off in the North Sea, it's struggling to get down here to us in the southeast. So actually, and this is where, us, the whole systems are fascinating, and I'm kind of, I'm not a technical expert, and that's one of the other things I like about it is I can pick up, I'm really curious about so much of this, how we build these energy ecosystems for the future, and my role is also a license to be nosy about all this stuff and try and pull it together into a way to go, okay, well, what does that actually mean in terms of what will that mean on the ground here in Wokingham, across Berkshire, and how can we do this again with people, not imposing on them. So one thing we hear from people is, big solar farms do have opposition, and there's some very valid views in that as well. I think there's also some misinformation out there that we need to try and just get the facts out as well. But whereas actually canopy solar is great for many reasons. So we've got to at least try it. And I think that's what's brilliant about what Wokingham Borough Council has been doing right now. It's like, okay, we're pushing ahead with trying to do the large solar farm, but let's also try these other business models. And at the end of the day, it's also got to make financial sense, because we're investing taxpayers' money, and we need to make sure that we're not taking risks that are inappropriate for us to take, and that it's going to be a good return for not just financially, but for all of the kind of social value and other benefits that we as a council are trying to deliver.
I was just going to say, so probably a couple of months back now, I interviewed the CTO of 3TI, a chap called Mark Potter, and what they do is kind of solar canopies, but the Papilio 3 is brilliant, and the charging there is great. And I just think it's that, to me, all of this is just, and I always talk about innovation. Innovation, things are moving forward so much, and this innovation is just fantastic. I mean, Mark's a massive fan of kind of vehicle to grid, vehicle to load, vehicle to X, and all this kind of stuff, and that still kind of blows my mind, just the whole idea of it. Do you know what I mean? But actually, if we can move forward with the way that we generate energy, and look at democratizing our own energy. I mean, we've got solar panels, and we've got a battery. It's not massive, but we've also got a heat pump, so, but it's things like we had a problem. I think there was a power failure probably about 6 weeks ago in Caversham, or kind of round by us, but we hadn't set it up so that we could just we could kind of still be running, but all of ours went off. So we it's things like that. It's we're still in that learning phase ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that's one thing I've been reflecting on. So I don't have a heat pump. I had to put in a new gas boiler, and I was really sad about it, because I've got micro bore heat pipes. So my house is mid-90s. It well enough insulated, but I would have had to completely retrofit the entire heating system to put a heat pump in. And particularly with small children around, that wasn't something the embedded carbon for one thing, but also, it's so, and that really made me think, okay, so like I said, domestic emissions is the biggest source of emissions in Wokingham Borough. It's a really hard nut to crack. We were fortunate enough, had the capital available. Personally, I would have paid above break even to change to a heat pump, which is not the case for everyone, very understandably, and it still didn't make sense. So I think we've got a huge challenge here. But on the electrification of transport, the technology is and has come on so much. But the education piece is really important. My mother-in-law, so we have solar panels. She now has solar panels and a little battery, and she had an EV before us. She was like, I wouldn't have got solar panels if you hadn't done it first, known the company, looked through the kind of design. And I think that's where we're, like you meant, sort of building that trust of these new technologies is so critical to increasing the rollout. And I guess the good thing about it is that it will be self-perpetuating. As more people get it, they'll tell more people, and it'll accelerate much more quickly. But getting over those first few hurdles, and so that, I mean, one of the things we've been doing as a council for a few years now is a scheme called Solar Together. So it's sort of a group. I think many councils across the country, but also I think pretty much all the councils in Berkshire do it, and you can register your interest for solar panels, and then they operate a group buying scheme to kind of try and keep the costs as low as possible, and then you can confirm if you want to go ahead or not once you get your final quote. So I think it's slightly trying to, and along the way we can provide a bit more information, try and demystify the whole process. And I think we've had over 500 installations in Wokingham over the last few years, so it's gone really well. But yeah, obviously we'd like loads more, and we are also looking at rolling out a heat pump related scheme of the same nature. I think that it's earlier days on that one, but hopefully that will be coming soon.
No, that's good. That's good, because I mean, like you say, sometimes you just need one, even if it's a member of your family or your friends or something like that, and them to say, how's it getting on? You know, how are you doing? I mean, we had teething problems with the heat pump to start off with. Fingers crossed for winter, but actually hopefully we've kind of got over those heat pumps, because I know about the charging curve for EVs, but I didn't know there was a heating curve for a heat pump. So there's things like that, but that's kind of been an interesting move, and just being able to just kind of let it get on with itself and adjust and things like that. But I'm going to ask you one. I could talk to you for ages, honestly. There's so much we could talk about, and like I say, just we'll let's keep it. Let's just bring you back another time, and we'll talk more. I want to ask you a question. Okay, if we're in the role, obviously you've not been in this role for too long. You've got other people. We've just kind of said there might be people who would be interested in possibly being involved in kind of local government, local politics, or whatever. What advice would you give to that person who's interested? What would they need to do, especially if they're interested in stuff to do with climate and kind of sustainability and that kind of stuff?
So yeah, and so I guess trying to work out, are there any groups near you who are doing things? So this is not local government politics side, but I've recently started linking up with the People Planet Pint group that meets in Wokingham. I don't know if you've... So that's a nationwide...
I have heard of that.
Possibly, I don't know if they are outside the UK, but it's a monthly meetup for people who are interested in sustainability. If you're first... I don't know how many people get free drinks, so that's nice as well. But yeah, and... I've only been along a couple of times, and I always have a clashing meeting at 7 p.m. So I go for like the first 50 minutes and then like, sorry guys, I'm going to go. But it's fantastic to just get to know, because it'll be some of those people in your local area who are really active. They might know what's going on. Maybe they're involved with like a volunteer conservation group, or they're professionals working in the sustainability field. It's a whole mixture, and it can give you an idea of what's going on around you. I mean, the other thing, I guess, on the local government side, see what your council's doing. I mean, one of the things I really am working with officers to try and expand this year is we've done a lot of work on our climate emergency action plan. A few years back, there was a real, I think we called it a climate summit, but there was a lot of engagement with the wider residents. But I mean, I wasn't here for that. I haven't really seen it. And I think it's that kind of thing that we need to update fairly regularly. So working with officers to say, okay, how do we bring more people in? We've got our members who sit on the overview and scrutiny committee, who look at each part of the action plan over meetings throughout the year, and generally our actions in the climate emergency space. But we have public questions that come into the council, and so on. But yeah, let's try and get out there a little bit more, work out what's going on in our community, get people's feedback in, and work out our role. But if you are, there's also in many parts of the country, there are town and parish councils, particularly, so I'm a member of the Charleville Parish Council. That is totally non-political. So, it depends, I guess, whether you think party politics might be your thing or not. Or, I mean, I'll be honest, it wasn't the main draw for me. But hey, I'm very happy that I'm ideologically where I should be. But that can be a hurdle to some people, I think, because there are a lot of pre-existing kind of assumptions, but also things to work out within any new structure. So you may or may not want to move into that space, but just try and go along. There are loads of events trying to engage people that often don't have amazing kind of amazing turnout. So see if you can see what's going on in your area. Check out council websites. Look at if you can find groups like People Planet Pint, or another one I've seen is Parents for Future. If you do have children, that's more of a kind of activist group, but they have kind of local chapters, and just get talking to people. See if it's something you think you might enjoy.
So do you know what I'm going to do? I've just scribbled it down now. I'm going to share those sites in the show notes. I don't know how many places they've got, but I will add those links. But on that note, it's been lovely talking to you, and I will, if you give me an invite, I will come to the event on the 20th of September.
Excellent.
That would be fabulous. So where is it again?
It's at Elmsfield in the centre of Wokingham.
So, but Katrin, it's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you ever so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And to everybody else watching and listening, thank you. You've seen this journey, whether you've only just joined us, if you've been around for a bit, thank you. If you just joined us, then that's fantastic. Check out the previous episodes and just, share it. Get the word out there. There are people who want to hear what Katrin's got to say. So yes, please do. And on that note, I'm going to say thanks for watching and listening. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you're a charge point operator, local authority or stakeholder in EV charging, I'd love to talk to you about our Charge Point Evolution framework. It's designed to help you create a seamless EV driver journey, boost utilisation and maximise your return on investment. Alternatively, if you know someone who'd be a great podcast guest or might be interested in sponsoring an episode, you can email me on liz@fullcircleci.co.uk. Thanks again for watching.